there are other Avengers.
We'll get you back on the lunchbox. No pressure, Ben.
Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my Moon Knight video for Doctor Strange. If Khonshu and Amit and the rest of the Ennead, the pantheon that they come from, the Egyptian gods, are such a threat to the main MCU dimension, why doesn't Doctor Strange try to stop them? Because that is his main job, protecting our reality. A lot of that is related to what's happening during the events of the Doctor Strange 2 trailer, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Thor Love and Thunder with all the other lesser gods of the MCU. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. I'm doing videos for all the Moon Knight episodes, and we're doing a giveaway for Disney Plus memberships. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and post all your theories in the comments below. During the previous Marvel movies we've seen so far, we've learned a little bit about the higher order of cosmic beings and lesser gods in the MCU. Technically a difference, like higher order cosmic beings can become lesser gods, but typically cosmic beings like the Celestials are completely different from the lesser gods. Their powers all come from different places. They're all big threats, though. Now we're seeing more of the multiverse during Marvel Phase 4. I know there's lots of questions about what the difference between dimensions and different universes are. I'll explain that during the video, too, because there is an important distinction. A lot of the Marvel Phase 4 movies use the term interchangeably, especially during that first Doctor Strange movie, when technically he's moving across different dimensions, not across different universes. The newest threat to the entire MCU that they just explained during Moon Knight Episode 1 is that the Egyptian pantheon that Khonshu and Amit come from, just the Egyptian gods, not all the gods, are threatening to physically enter the main MCU dimension again. Once upon a time, they did exist inside the main MCU dimension, but then they chose to leave humanity traveling to another dimension, another plane of existence, and they exist there currently, and that's where Khonshu is speaking to Moon Knight from, because he's only inside his head. He's not physically inside the main MCU dimension. There are a lot of lesser gods that did exist inside the main MCU dimension. Like you have Thor, he is a lesser god, he's inside the MCU. You had people like Odin and Hela, they existed inside the main MCU briefly. When these super powerful cosmic beings and other lesser gods are outside of the main MCU dimension, they're still super powerful, but their powers to mess with what's going on inside the MCU are greatly weakened. So if Ethan Hawke's Arthur Harrow villain character is successful in bringing Amit, the Devourer of Souls, into the main MCU dimension, she'll get this huge power boost. If she were to physically enter the MCU main dimension, she wouldn't have that limitation. She could use her power to go full Minority Report on everybody at the same time, instantly. So during Avengers Infinity War, Doctor Strange literally told Iron Man in that great scene of them having their big bro-off moment that his main job is protecting their reality, the main MCU dimension, from threats inside and outside their dimension. That's actually the main purpose of all the special enchantments around the Earth formed by the different sanctums all over the world. When you see the symbols of the Vishanti cover the Earth in this scene here, they're the same symbols that you see in the windows of all the different sanctums. Together, they all form a protective magical barrier that prevents super powerful beings like Dormammu, other cosmic beings, lesser gods, from entering the MCU dimension and attacking Earth anytime they feel like it. Doctor Strange also said that he keeps a watch list of all the big threats to Earth that are currently inside the MCU. So one of the main reasons why Doctor Strange has allowed Arthur Harrow and Amit to gain this many followers for so long a time, all the other Sorcerer Supremes have done the same thing too, because arguably this has been going on for a long time. Potentially threatening the MCU in such a huge way is mostly because, for instance, in present day, Doctor Strange understands the Ennead. He understands the relationship between Khonshu, Amit, the other gods that are part of their family. Part of his training involves reading a lot of books and learning about how all the different lesser gods of the MCU exist. So he knows a little bit about some of these other gods. He doesn't know everything, but he knows about the existence of a lot of these higher order beings. And he's read about how Khonshu has made it his mission along all these years with the support of the other gods to keep Amit from being able to enter the MCU physically. Khonshu could also try to physically enter the MCU if he wanted to and become way more powerful. He is a dirtbag to be true, but he's not that crazy, at least not yet. He's very capricious, he does not care about humanity or other people just in general, but he also doesn't want to see the utter destruction of the entire third dimension. Given enough time, eventually everybody would think about doing something evil and they'd be judged and killed off, so they'd eventually lose every single follower they have. And as a result, no one would believe in them and they'd eventually fade into nothingness. A lot of the lesser gods' power levels come from their access to the faith of their followers, so they still have a lot of power when they're outside the main MCU dimension, but if they physically entered the MCU and regular people saw them and started believing in them again, they quickly get way more powerful with all the power of that faith and be able to eventually change the MCU however they wanted, kind of like the Infinity Stones. For those of you asking, no, they're not as powerful as the Infinity Stones, especially when they're trapped outside the main MCU dimension. They'd have to get every single person inside the MCU to believe in them as gods, and even the other universes of the third dimension, theoretically, and then they would get powerful enough to be as powerful as the Infinity Stones. But it would just take so long for that to happen, and so many things would have to go right, that it's very unlikely that that would ever happen. One of the clues as to why this Ennead, this group of gods that Khonshu belongs to, initially left many thousands of years ago is in the beginning of Moon Knight Episode 1. Remember when Stephen Grant is trying to stay awake early in the episode, reading all this Egyptian history on the Ennead itself? The books talk about the Egyptian gods turning away from humans, not caring about them as much. Because of the rise of technology, humans started believing in technology more than the actual gods, believing in them less, making them weaker. So initially, a lot of the gods left the main MCU dimension because people just stopped caring about them. The other reason why this particular group of gods stays inside that other dimension away from the MCU is because Arthur Harrow said the other gods, as part of that Ennead, learned what Amit was trying to do, enter the MCU and judge everybody at the same time, so they wanted to stop her. So they're kind of keeping themselves in this alternate reality to prevent her from entering the main MCU. So one of the main reasons why Doctor Strange and all the previous Sorcerer Supremes like Agamotto himself, I guess you could call Wong one of the Sorcerer Supremes because technically he is currently the Sorcerer Supreme. If you think about the Eternals movie, Merlin was also probably the Sorcerer Supreme during his era on Earth. They all probably relied on those gods policing themselves inside this alternate dimension. We've all watched the Doctor Strange 2 trailer a billion times. Currently, Doctor Strange is preoccupied with Scarlet Witch trying to enact her plan to use the Darkhold and America Chavez to travel the third dimension multiverse until she can find a version of Billy and Tommy. And in the process, cause a whole bunch of chaos, potentially breaking a lot of the protective enchantments and restrictions that prevent super powerful cosmic beings and lesser gods from entering the main MCU and wreaking all kinds of havoc. So it's like a here we go again kind of situation. Like we go from Avengers Endgame with the Infinity Gauntlet threatening the entire MCU to a bunch of gods and Scarlet Witch threatening the entire MCU. Same old problems, just a different day. Just to explain the difference between dimensions and universes, like we talk about the multiverse in Doctor Strange 2, all these different X-Men multiverse characters showing up, the main difference is that the main MCU, for instance, is now technically called the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. It contains infinite worlds inside the third dimension with other variants of characters like Spider-Man No Way Home with all the different Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield versions of Peter Parker. All these different people of the third dimension exist in a similar reality with minor differences. When you start talking about traveling between different dimensions, though, typically you're talking about traveling between different orders of existence. There's a lot of time travel in the MCU, so time is a good example of that. So in the third dimension, you witness time as you move forward or backwards through it. But if somehow you were able to physically enter the fourth dimension, like a higher order dimension, you would witness all the timeline, everything that has happened, everything that's happening, or everything that will happen in the future, all instantaneously at the same time in the same moment. That's actually how Amit exists inside the Moon Knight series. The reason why she can detect everything evil that anyone has ever done, is doing, or will do is because she can see the entire timeline simultaneously all in the same instant. So inside the Marvel movies, the Marvel TV series, when they talk about traveling between different dimensions, they also use the term interchangeably. They call it the multiverse. You could call different dimensions part of the multiverse, but really each different dimension has its own specific multiverse that exists inside a similar reality. Most of what we're seeing in the Doctor Strange 2 trailer, at least so far, is different universes coming together from just the third dimension. What we saw in the first Doctor Strange movie is a better example of different dimensions. So like Dormammu, for instance, becomes a higher order cosmic being that exists on a different level from other normal people, and he exists in a different dimension that's trying to absorb the main MCU dimension. They changed a little bit about the Thor characters too. In the comics, technically they exist as higher order beings from another dimension, but inside the MCU movies, they try to give a more scientific explanation, so the character's origin story is a little bit different, and they're just normal cosmic beings from a different place that you could fly to inside the third dimension, who eventually are able to gain enough power to become lesser gods. The rest of the Moon Knight episodes will help answer a lot of these questions too, like what is the difference between a cosmic being and a lesser god, like a legit god in the MCU? Remember, a lot of it has to do with where people's powers come from and how they exist inside different dimensions. But my full Moon Knight Episode 2 video will post next. Make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel so you don't miss that. Everyone click here for all my Moon Knight episode videos, and click here for my Doctor Strange 2 trailer video and Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.